And I'm going to see if I can bring this live to Facebook as well. Okay, probably not. We're not going to bother. I don't want to keep you waiting. Okay. So you know this because you registered. I'm bringing in this sort of metaphor, this muscle of Marie Kondo and your marriage to explain thought work, which is my absolute favorite way to work on marriage. And I think something missing from so much of what we offer people. So I'm going to explain all that to you. What in the world Marie Kondo has anything to do with your marriage? But first of all, I just want to say hi. This is me in much lighter shades. I'm Kayla Levin. I am a life coach, a marriage coach, a podcaster, as most of you know from First Year Married, and of course, a wife and a mom. I've got 4 kids. And what I really want to offer you today is a couple things. Number one, we just came out of a whirlwind of holidays, and now we're kind of gone. If you've listened to the most recent podcast, we've kind of just gone from this very sort of planning, forward thinking, who do I want to be, introspective season. And now we're moving into this sort of actualizing season, right? Being able to take action, execute on some of those ideas. And it's funny because for a lot of us, we're kind of just feeling a little bit maybe like burnt out, or sort of like it was a pretty intense thing. And like, how do we get ourselves like rebooted to now take action on all of those things we just got so inspired about? So that's kind of what the main thing that I want to offer you today. I hope everyone who comes on here really is able to take something away from it. I'm also going to be offering you a chance to ask your questions. So again, if you have marriage questions or podcast questions or coaching questions and you want to get those answered, I've got a big chunk of time here just to give you some coaching, because that's something I want to offer to you. I'm not really able to answer all the questions that come my way sometimes. So I thought this would be a great way to kind of to offer that within a container. And I also want to give you a feel for what coaching is like. If you have not had an experience to do coaching, pretty much everyone at this point has heard of a life coach, but not everyone really understands what it is. I know that because recently someone said to me, I couldn't do what you do because I just couldn't handle people complaining all the time. And I was like, that's not what I do. I couldn't do that job either. Coaching is really much more focused on trying to live a life that is more. It is more whatever you want it to be. That's without it being more overwhelming or more stressful or more work, but more of what you want, whether that's more authentic or more vibrant, or you really get to choose. That's one of my favorite things about coaching. So my other goal beyond inspiring you is just to give you a little bit of that taste today. And I am going to take some time towards the end because I know some of you want to know more information about some of the programs that I offer, ways to work with me. So I will also be letting you know about that. And you totally don't have to do that. As I said, I'm here to help you out today. So either way, but if you see that this is something you're really excited about and want to learn more about, I will be giving you that information as well. Okay. So I'm going to dive right into our Marie Kondo bit. I see a bunch of new people came on, so welcome. And I'm going to start with, let me just make this really clear. I don't actually do a good job with like decluttering and organizing. So lest you be confused, I'm very good at organizing my mind. I'm very good at helping other people organize their minds. The actual stuff, somewhat less so, better than I used to be. But it's a great, great metaphor for what we do sometimes that can kind of get us in trouble with our minds and what we could do better. So what are some of the things we do? And what do I mean by a cluttered closet? You know what that feels like when your brain feels like a mess. You're spinning out in negativity or frustration or just these questions or decisions you just cannot make, right? And you keep going back to the same thing, or you're stuck on the same old resentments. You just can't stand somebody in your life, right? That's kind of the cluttered closet. That's what it feels like to have a brain that's messy. And that's just part of the human experience. But coaching helps us manage that. But what do we do when we have that cluttered brain? It's kind of the same thing that we might do with a cluttered closet. So one thing that we do is we go and we get validation. And validation can be very helpful. Sometimes you just need some validation. No, you're not a mess. It's okay. Everyone's like this. We need validation, but validation doesn't actually help us solve for the cluttering, right? So I might, in my relationship, go to my friends or my mother and complain or say that this is because he's a man or because of society and the patriarchy, right? And not to say that there aren't differences between men and women, not to say that there might not be injustices in terms of how men and women are treated. But when we're in that space of just kind of pointing fingers or just asking for validation, like I'm right? Like I should feel terrible, right? This was really bad that they did that, right? It keeps us very stuck, right? So it's kind of like a person looking at a closet and saying, yeah, I think we're all a mess. Everyone has a messy closet. There's just nothing to do about it. Closets are messy. Clothes just pile up, right? And then they go and they find other people who also think that that's how closets work, right? And we don't get anywhere. We don't clean up the closet. All right. What else? This is one that I see a lot, and I love, love, love the women that I work with, because most of the women who I work with, by the time they get to me, they've heard from the podcast that this is very much not the way that I work, which is learning the rules or the tricks about men so that I can get him to do what I want, right? Which is kind of like trying 5 different systems, right? I'm going to try the thing where you declutter for 15 minutes a day. And then I'm going to try the thing where I don't know, I'm going to do a capsule wardrobe, or I'm going to just take all my shoes and buy something really fancy for it, right? Trying all these different systems instead of just looking for really what is my goal, right? So much of the time in the marriage world, there are things that motivate men that are different than what motivate women. That's true. But if what I'm doing is learning them so that I can kind of puppeteer him into what I need, I'm still going to have a messy closet, right? Because I'm still not able to sort of have an authentic and open relationship with him. And I might not be so clean about what my needs are. So when we're not clear about our needs, we have a lot of them, right? When we're really clear about our thinking and what we really do need and what really is important to us, we're very clear about what those things are, and we're able to let go of a lot of other ones without being a martyr. The last one would be putting a positive spin on things, right? So some people will call this toxic positivity. So I imagine this is like somebody who has a messy closet and they go to the container store and they spend $500 and they get the most beautiful containers, and they come home and they just jam all the clutter inside, right? If I'm filled with resentment about my husband because I really, really have something that's been going on forever and it's just not getting better, and I'm so frustrated, and then I just try and say, well, just be happy you're married. You dated a long time anyway. It's good that I'm married, and I'm trying to shove it into a pretty container. It's not going to work. You're too smart for that. Okay. So these are the decluttering don'ts. They work for your brain, and I think they work for your closet. Let me know if anyone here has more closet organization experience than I do. Okay. So the solution is to pull a Marie Kondo. The solution is to do exactly what she says, but we're going to do it with your brain. And this is how I coach. This is how coaching works. So decluttering your brain, what does that look like? The first step is we pull it all out, right? So if you don't know Marie Kondo, she's this adorable home organization guru. And what she has you do first is you start with a closet. You take all of your clothing and you put it, let's say, on a bed or on a couch. You put it somewhere else. You remove everything from the closet. Okay. You pull it all out. This is something that I find that women who have very high expectations, they want to really be like a kind person, or they want to be a refined person. Sometimes they struggle with this part because they don't want to speak negatively, right? But the problem is that when you keep it all in there, it really is just like a closet. Like, remember when you were a little kid and you thought there was a monster in the closet, and then someone turned on the light and it was just a hat and a coat and, a stuffed animal, right? It's kind of the same way with our brains. When those things or those thoughts are in there and we're not willing to take them out and look at them, which might mean that sometimes I think, oh, my husband is such a jerk sometimes. Like, it might not be the way I would ever speak, right? But when I pull it out, I'm able to expose it to the light of day. And just like a monster, many of those thoughts just evaporate. I know, of course, he's not a jerk. He's a great guy. Okay. So the first piece is I have to pull it all out. And in coaching, we call that the thought download or the brain dump. I take an issue that I have, whether it's about my marriage, it's about, remember with marriage, one of the things I love about being a newlywed coach is I coach on everything surrounding your marriage. I don't just coach on your marriage, but I might be coaching you about how you maybe had to move within the first couple of years. Maybe you are picking up in your career for the first time in your life, right? Depending on what age you got married and what age you started your career. Babies. household responsibilities, right? All these things come along with it. So whatever the issue is, I put it at the top of a piece of paper, the top of a Word document or Google Doc or whatever, right? What's the issue? What am I struggling with? Who am I struggling with? And then I put down all my thoughts. I just free write. I get all the thoughts down on paper. I'm not doing this to reiterate the thoughts. I'm not doing this to convince myself that I'm right. This really is that bad. I'm just doing this to be able to sit back afterwards and observe, oh, that's the clutter. And just like a closet, when you pull everything out, there might be some things you want to keep. Some of those thoughts might be positive or might be negative, but important for you to hang on to, right? We don't judge any of them. I don't know yet. I just have to get it all out, right? So I'm not writing, I'm not doing my free writing and judging it as I go. I'm just doing my writing. That's it. Okay. Feel free to send in questions as we go. And if there's anything you want me to show you how we would do this with, if you have a frustration, you have a challenge right now in your life, again, it could be anything, your marriage or all the things that surround it. Feel free to put that in the Q&A. You can even send it in anonymously, so I won't even know who that was. And if you put in the Q&A with your name, I won't say your name. Okay. Step number 2 that Marie has you do is she has you pick up each item, like you pick up an item and then you sort of think, does this item spark joy? Okay, which is what made her so famous. Spark joy is her phrase. Does this spark joy? Does this bring joy in me? Now, it's a little bit different with our thoughts, but it's a very similar thing. What I do is I look at my brain dump. So let's say I am talking about my husband and maybe it's a specific thing. Like maybe I asked him to get the baby in the middle of the night and he just wouldn't wake up and I had to go get the baby and I was really tired. And, we had this conversation already that I needed more help, right? So my thought is he's really insensitive. Okay. So, and I have all sorts of thoughts because you have 60,000 thoughts a day, right? You're not going to write all of them down, but you want to write down the big ones. So I take out one of those thoughts from my thought download. I grab it. Okay. And I'm going to examine that thought. I'm going to follow it all the way through and I'll show this to you in the next slide, which is what is this thought creating for me in my life? Is it a positive net result with this thought or is it a negative net result? Okay. It's not about deciding, no, he's great. He's wonderful. I like everything about him. No, we're not changing it yet. We're not judging it yet. I'm just going to see if it gives me a positive result. Is this helping me? This thought. Okay. So that's sparking joy, examining the thought. Okay. The next thing she has you do is like, once you've decided, does it spark joy? Yes, I'm going to keep it. No, I'm going to toss it. Right. And then of course, donate or whatever. That's the organizing part. It's not my part. Right. I decide if I'm keeping it or tossing it. I look at the net results and I make a choice. And then only after I now have so much less to go back in the closet and I know what it is and I can see the categories, then I get to do my container store run and get the really pretty containers and put them in because it's going to fit. It's natural. I know I have 5 pairs of shoes. So here's the 5 pairs of shoes space that I want to create at the bottom of my closet, right? So at the end, I might now be in a place where I actually can have a thought. It's amazing how the same thought that we're not able to accept in the beginning, right? I should just be grateful for my husband. Sorry, if you're filled with resentment and frustration, you're not going to feel grateful. It's not going to stick, right? But when you've got all those thoughts out and you've run some of these models, then you actually kind of can get to a place of gratitude. It's from a very different energy. It's not from a forcing energy. It just kind of will bubble up. Okay. So this is what this looks like in the self-coaching model. All right. So we take any problem that you have, any situation, any frustration, any challenge, anything you're trying to accomplish and you're having trouble accomplishing, and we can put anything in the model. And the way the model goes, and I'm just giving you a super quick overview, is that I start with the circumstance. Okay. I have to start by defining the fact of the situation. So I start with the circumstance. These are the facts of your life. These are always the things outside your control, which includes anything you did in the past, right? Because anything you did in the past is now outside your control. It wasn't your control before, but right now it's not. Okay. So it's something somebody else said, how much money you have in your bank account, right? Your height, your weight, all of these things are the facts of your life. And these things are neutral actually until we interpret them. Okay. Which doesn't mean that you need to feel neutral about them, but the status of them is neutrality. Let me just get this quick question. No, I can't see you. This is a webinar. All I can see is your Q&As. And I don't think, unless someone tells me otherwise, I don't think you can see each other's questions at all. Okay. But if you have any questions, again, feel free to put them in. If you want to apply this to something in your life, I'll have some time for that as well. Okay. Once a fact happens. Okay. So let's say I shake going back to our baby example. This is when that happened, by the way. I'm changing it a little bit, but this happened for us, right? So I shake my husband and I say, wake up, the baby's crying. Can you get her for me, please? And he's still asleep. That's a fact. I can quote myself. I know that I shook him. I can check. He's still sleeping. That's the fact. And then I have a thought. And these happen automatically, right? I automatically have a thought, but it's how I'm interpreting that circumstance. So one person might be like, oh my gosh, he's exhausted. Is he sick? And another person might say, he's so inconsiderate. He knows how tired I am, right? Another person might just be like, oh, men, you can't trust them, right? Any of those things, okay? Whatever the thought is that comes up is going to actually drive your feeling. That's the next piece of our model, okay? My feeling is coming from that thought. My feeling didn't come from him not waking up. And the way I know that is that if I had a different thought, if I thought, oh my gosh, maybe he's sick, I'd feel worried. But because I had the thought, he's so inconsiderate, but it happened so fast, I didn't even notice it. All I noticed was he didn't wake up. So I'm feeling hurt, right? He doesn't take care of me, right? So now I'm feeling hurt all of a sudden. I didn't even notice the thought happened, but it always happened. And it's the most important thing that you can know. It's critical to know that, because the good news is that the circumstance is outside your control, but everything else on this model is in your control. Okay. So as I showed you, my thought's going to create my feeling, and then that's going to drive my actions. Yeah. So if I'm feeling angry with him because I'm thinking he's so inconsiderate, so maybe I'll go get the baby, but then the whole time I'm spinning in my head and I'm thinking about all the things that he ever did that were upsetting to me. Or maybe I'm going to, the next morning, I might not get him a coffee when I normally get him a coffee, or I might, just be a little bit more stiff with him or put up some walls or anything like that. Right. What actions am I taking because of that feeling? My feelings come from my actions. Okay. I'm sorry. My feelings drive my actions, they don't come from. And then the last thing that we always want to look at, and again, this is the spark joy piece, right? This is me understanding what's the result of this thought, is what's the sum total of all those actions? What happens when I don't get him the coffee and I snub him and I'm kind of, short with my responses and I'm thinking about all the things that I'm kind of being inconsiderate. I become inconsiderate, right? So I'm looking at what did I just create here? What was I always talk about in the podcast, right? Where did the train go? This train went to me being inconsiderate. And what's amazing about this result is that it provides proof for the thought. Okay. This result is always going to prove it true, or it's going to rehash the cycle. He's inconsiderate. Now I'm inconsiderate. Now he's for sure probably going to be a little less considerate because I'm no fun to talk to, right? So it's just going to recreate that cycle, which is why we think our thought was correct, but our thought wasn't correct. We just created it, right? It's are we observing our reality or are we creating our reality? So much of the time we're really creating the reality. Okay, so that was a super, super quick review. What I'm going to do, because you know what, I haven't done a webinar in a million years, so I wasn't really sure who's going to come and if you're going to have questions. So what I did is I took some of the anonymous questions that I had in my group before, and in webinar classes, they say to just pretend that people are sending these in. I'm not going to pretend. These are great questions and they were sent in by people who did first year married. So I'm going to go ahead and read some of these just to give you a feel for how this works with coaching. Do I want to change to the next slide? No, I'm going to stick on this slide for now. But again, you can send in anonymous questions. No one else will see them. And it does not have to be specific to your marriage, but it absolutely can be if you're wanting to see, if you're feeling frustrated about something or you're feeling hurt by something. I'd much rather answer your questions that you need help with than these, but it's amazing how much you learn from hearing other people get coached. So it really is going to work either way. All right. So I will keep the Q&A up. If anyone wants to ask a question, I will see it there. All right. So again, these are from ages and ages ago, and they were all sent in to me anonymously. I get really triggered when my 3-year-old has a temper tantrum and I end up yelling. How can I stop? Okay. So if I were to look at this inside the model, what I would want to do is I'd want to get really facty about what a temper tantrum looked like this time. Okay. So I might want to say like, what was your 3-year-old doing? Was he or she punching the floor, throwing objects on the floor, yelling, right? What would I want to say? Like really, really factual. And then what's great you can see is that she started with the circumstance. We want to get a little more facty about it because one person might call a tantrum one thing, another person might call it something else. And then we know that she said she feels triggered. So I'd want to know what that feeling is. Maybe it's anger. And then she has this action. She ends up yelling. Okay. So this is what we normally notice, right? Something happened. I had a really strong emotion and I took action. And what the model teaches us is how to slow down enough to say, why did the toddler punching the floor and let's say screaming with tears running down her face make me feel angry? Okay. And what I want you to know is that you have an upper brain, which is the part of you that's sophisticated and forward thinking and conceptual. And it's the part of you that plans and has goals and values. But you also have a lower brain, and it's the part that's trying to keep you alive. And it thinks that sometimes your toddler might be the enemy. Right. And that's fine. That's the human experience is we have the upper brain and the lower brain. If you've ever had to speak in front of like in a public environment and you felt like you were going to die, that was your lower brain saying, I think they're going to kill me, right? They're all going to hate me. No one's ever going to want to talk to me again. I'm going to be ostracized from society. And that means death, right? Because they won't protect me when the bear comes to attack. So that's the lower brain. That's why your heart's racing. That's why you're so nervous when you're going into a public speaking event. If you're the type that gets nervous, which is most people. Okay. So when you're looking at your thought, notice that it's probably not coming. If you're feeling angry, it's probably coming from your lower brain. And it's probably the kind of thing that might surprise you that it even ran through your head. Right. So it might be something like, she's such a brat, or she's so ungrateful. She's like, of course, not really how you would describe your child to somebody else. But in that moment, there's something very, especially if you feel a strong trigger, it means you had a really juicy, dramatic thought. So you want to articulate that thought. Maybe it's even, I hate her. It's okay. It's not true just because you thought it. It was just suggested. That's what I always like to think. It's like my brain suggests thoughts and my upper brain gets to decide which ones are true for me. So sometimes my brain suggests thoughts like she's the enemy. My upper brain knows that's not really true, but I still have to deal with the emotion that came up from feeling that, from thinking that way. Okay. So then she can say, I'm going to guess for her because she's not, right. I don't have her telling me that if she's thinking, she's impossible. And then she's actually, that wouldn't make you feel angry probably, but it's like, let's say the thought is even, I hate her when she does this. And so she's feeling angry. Right. And then the action is that she starts yelling at her. And then she could also look for what else is happening, or what would you be doing if you weren't feeling angry right now? And then what's the result? Maybe I hate myself when I act like this. And then there's just a big old hate fest going around. It's going to like reinforce that I hate her. Now she makes me act like this, right? It's just going to kind of cycle that whole thing. But when I can step back and be like, hey, it's just a 3-year-old making a really loud noise with tears on her face. Interesting that I did that. We don't judge it. Just watch it, right? Interesting that that's where my head went. Okay. Oh, okay, great. We've got some questions coming in. So I'm going to take any live questions before I do any of my older questions. Is it possible to have a made up model? Meaning, I think my husband will do XYZ and therefore get all angry already. Oh, you are not alone. I've coached on this one before a couple times before even discussing or asking him about something. Yeah. Okay. So this is really cute. So if she thinks her husband's going to, let's say she thinks her husband's going to criticize something or ask her to, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example because she didn't give me one, but she thinks her husband's going to criticize something. So she's already getting angry. Okay. So what would be her circumstance? How does she choose a circumstance? I would put the thought is he's going to blah, blah, blah. Okay. He's going to XYZ, or I know he's just going to da, 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 right? That's my thought. What circumstance is making me think that? Is it we got an invitation to go somewhere? Is it I saw he was looking at, something online that maybe he'd want to do? Is it that he didn't get home on time? So, maybe last time he asked me to do something, right? So your circumstance, like what's going on right now, but being really facty, and we're not going to try and fill it with all our evidence. We don't need to, because we're not trying to justify the thought. We're just exploring it. So then my thought, I know he's just going to do this. And then she makes herself angry. Interesting that our thoughts don't even have to come from a real trigger, right? I mean, I always think about this with when I was a newlywed, my thought was always, he's going to leave me. And then my feeling was despair. Okay. I had no circumstance for that other than I was married. That's it. I had no evidence. Thank God. Some people have evidence. Even still, it's just a thought, right? I had no evidence, but that was my thought. And it didn't matter. I still felt extreme despair, and I still did a lot of crying. And I still left the relationship in a way because I was never present. I was always in my worry space, right? So you can have a whole model without much of a trigger, okay? Which is such awesome news, because it means so much of the decluttering like doesn't require any changes in your life, but you just get to feel so much better. So again, so I'm just showing her that one, right? He's for sure going to do this, and I feel angry. And then my action is that I start imagining all the ways that he's going to do this and what I should do. And sometimes even like what I'm going to say to him, right? And I don't know the result because I don't really know the thought, but then it would be interesting to see how that comes together. Okay. Okay. Here's the next question. I have a hard time doing self-care. For example, force myself to brush my teeth or moisturize dry skin. 2, spending time and money on myself, clothes, a fancy drink, manicure, etc. Even when I do these things, trying to be kind to myself, it doesn't fill me and I can't enjoy it. I love this question. So self-care is such a fuzzy concept. The way that I teach self-care inside the mastermind is we divide out different levels of self-care. This is really important, okay? Because there's something called baseline self-care, which is I'm not even functional below this level. I need to take care of myself, right? And then we have different forms of self-care. We have social self-care, spiritual self-care, physical self-care, right? And by kind of like looking at all the different quadrants of self-care and brainstorming, we're able to get to something that's a little bit more fulfilling and meaningful than kind of what tends to be self-care, which for most of us is like bubble bath, eating something, shopping, right? And it could be that those things just don't fill you because that's not really your deepest, connection. Is that what you loved to do when you were a child? Would that have been the kind of thing that lit you up? So one possibility is that it doesn't fill you. But what I want to show you here is that the way you feel, like I would say circumstance, bought myself a fancy drink, fancy is really, fancy is interpretation. So I wouldn't say that. That's not a fact, but I could say I bought myself a chai latte and it cost $7. Okay. And I'm feeling maybe unfulfilled or deprived or unsatisfied, right? What's the feeling that you're having right now? And see if you can go back and say, what's my thought about this? The thought might just be, I have a hard time with self-care. And so that chai latte is not really going to create fulfillment, because remember, the latte can't create fulfillment. What creates fulfillment is your thinking. So if my thinking is I have a hard time with self-care, I'm not going to feel so self-cared, so cared for, right? That's going to be my response. So I would even look at that thought, right? Maybe it's not possible not to be good at self-care, or maybe self-care is just, you're just practicing and just trying stuff and exploring, and that's all fine. That's perfect. Exactly what it should be, right? See what else is possible, because let's see if we were to follow this through, right? She's feeling unfulfilled or deprived or whatever because she's thinking, I'm not so good at self-care. So this latte, of course, can't generate an emotion, right? And so then she's feeling sort of deprived. And so then what does she do for actions? Like maybe she's not really digging deep to find some creative types of self-care. Maybe, I know for myself, when I feel this way, I don't do the kinds of self-care that actually push me outside my comfort zone, right? Like going out to something that's a little bit social. I'm like more in a place of like, oh, I'll just stay home. Maybe I should just do like the reading a book, self-care. But really what I need inside is like to go be around a lot of people, right? Maybe she's sort of sticking to some of the old same routines. And the result is she doesn't really figure out how to fill herself. Make sense? So that's how that would go into the model. Feel free to send in another question if you want to. I would just say one other thing is that if you do something that costs money and your thought about it is, I shouldn't be doing this or I don't deserve it, you can see how that also is still going to generate the feeling, right? That, guilt, shame, that's also not going to create that yummy filled up feeling. So what I would offer you is put the feeling in first. Do you want to feel cared for? Do you want to feel satisfied? Do you want to feel fulfilled? So then if you were feeling that way, how would you be acting differently? What might be different for you, right? And what thoughts make you feel that way? Maybe it has nothing to do with quote unquote self-care activities. Maybe I've had one person that I remember speaking with who might be on this call. I don't remember. I think I saw her name. Who realized that like trying to take care of herself was actually not as much taking care of herself as just getting up and cleaning the apartment. It felt good to her to be really productive. And when she was productive, that was a form of self-care for her. We're all very different. So don't judge yourself if that's not you, right? But we get into these kind of like tropes about what self-care is supposed to look like. Okay. I think this is the person who sent the husband. I think the husband's going to do XYZ. So try, if you guys are sending stuff in, I'd love you to, wait, hold on. Both people are sending in follow-ups. I love that. Please go ahead and send out other questions if you want to, guys. These are great. Okay, so I'm going to go back to self-care. We'll wrap that one and then I'll go back to the first one. So the circumstance, that my thought is I can't enjoy, right? Because she's thinking, of course you think you can't enjoy it because you don't think you're good at self-care. So what if that's a thought? Remember, sometimes we're observing a reality, but most of the time we're creating the reality. So when you think I can't enjoy this thing, you're not going to enjoy it. And then you're going to prove to yourself you're just not good at enjoying things. It's kind of trippy, but it works. So I recommend it. Okay. And I think this was from the person who said that she was imagining her model. And she said, I imagine my husband will do something. So she says her circumstances, I want to discuss an issue with him. So I would even get more facty. I allow things like I want or a goal if it's written down. So if I put in my calendar, on my Google Calendar says, make sure to discuss gun decision for next year. So then fine. I would say calendar event to discuss gun decision. Okay. But if it's just something that's brewing in your head, I don't put that. We don't put thoughts in the circumstance line. Okay. So just try and get a little bit more factual. You could put something about what you want to discuss. That's fine. Okay, great. Yes. More of a deserving thing for sure. For sure. So, that's just something so amazing for us to notice. It's like that's our brains all have patterns and like habitual thinking, right? So it's possible if you have a thought like, I don't deserve to treat myself, you might have that thought in other places too, right? Like maybe it's hard for you to keep a boundary. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying sometimes you'll see patterns like this, right? Where maybe it's hard to keep a boundary because you don't feel like you deserve to tell somebody no and make them uncomfortable, right? Or something like that. And so I just like to say, I have a podcast episode on confidence, but confidence for me is one of the most powerful things that I've learned from coaching, which is that when I worry about my level of value or what I deserve or don't deserve, it's actually irrelevant, right? Like when I see the model, I'm like, oh, that doesn't have me showing up like I want to be showing up. Scratch that. What should we do instead? Right? Like moving along. And it's so interesting. And we just like our brain wants to kind of keep us in the same place. And I like to think of it as this way, like our lower brain is like, my job is to keep you alive. You have survived until this point doing exactly the same thing. So now you want to go and buy a fancy drink. You might die. You don't deserve it. Like it'll just throw out anything. It'll say, well, you probably won't even like it. And you'll be like, no, I for sure will like it. And then it'll say, well, it's too much money. Like, I think I could afford $7. Like, well, you don't deserve it. And you're like, that one hurts. That one feels something. And your brain's like, noted. I'll bring back that one. Don't deserve it. That's how I can get her to do what I want. Okay. So we just go like, the metaphor I give is this is like, imagine you're driving somewhere and there's kind of this like cranky old lady that every time you get in your car, she just opens the back seat and climbs in and she sits in the back of your car. And wherever you're driving, you're just driving through your life, making your decisions, going to buy yourself a nice coffee. She's in the back seat and she's like, well, I always knew you didn't deserve nice things. Remember when you were little and you did that and you never thanked your parents and they told you that you were a drama queen and da 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 da. And she's just like this cranky old lady in the backseat who's chattering away. And you're just like, trying to get my coffee, please. It's only when I agree with her that I'm going to change directions, that I'm going to change how I feel, that I'm going to change where I'm driving. Right. So we all kind of have this. We have this like inner panel that's chattering away about what's wrong with you and what you're not doing right. And the truth is, it's not even about saying, oh, I can't believe it. Where did that come from? Just like, oh yeah, that's just the lady in the back seat. She's got kind of purple hair. She likes to tell me I'm no good at things. It's okay. She means well. She thinks she's going to protect me with that. But we know better. She can say that as much as she needs to. When I start something new with my business, I usually some form of like, this is going to fail miserably, and then you'll be a failure, and then you're going to have to stop doing what you're doing. Like, okay, we're going to just do it anyway. Thank you for your input. I know you're trying to protect me. It always comes up. So it's not a problem for me anymore. I just watch it happen. I can plan for it. All right. Here's another question. It was another baby one. I'm not comfortable with how my husband handles the baby, especially when he burps her. I feel like he's too rough, but I need his help. I feel stuck and alone in caring for our baby and judgmental of him for not doing it right. Okay. So if I were to put this in here, right, I would say my thought is he's not doing it right. Or actually, if she's feeling uncomfortable, is it just that she's thinking he's not doing it right? Or is she thinking this is dangerous? Like, what do you mean you're not comfortable? Make sure you're using really the kind of language that your brain is using. Are you feeling alarm or discomfort, right? In your feeling line, you want to get specific. You don't want to just say bad, right? And be like, what kind of bad? Am I feeling angsty? Am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling panic? Am I feeling anger, fury? These are all very different, right? And the more you start to do this, the more your vocabulary and your self-awareness really grows. And it's amazing because one of the best ways to process an emotion, step one, is to name it. So even just that exercise on its own is so valuable before you even move beyond that, right? So let's say she's feeling, I'm going to guess that she's not just feeling uncomfortable. She's probably feeling anxious, and she's probably thinking something like he's going to hurt her, right? And so look at my circumstance. What's my circumstance? Now, what's really interesting, this is a great one because I know a lot of people are probably thinking, maybe he is going to hurt her. I don't want to just be happy with everything. And that's an important thing to know about coaching, is that our goal is not to only have positive emotions and to only have positive thoughts. Our goal is to, as much as possible, have thoughts that serve us. And sometimes we might need our result to be, I take action, I make a boundary, I say something, I stand up for myself, things that can be a little uncomfortable, right? So it's not always, I tell somebody no. How hard is that for so many of us, right? So it's not about, I let everyone do whatever they want and I'm just going to be in my head and allow everything. Absolutely not, right? Sometimes our growth is in getting over our drama and realizing this is not actually a problem. And sometimes our growth is saying, I've been really uncomfortable to say something because I'm not giving myself space or permission to be a bother to other people. And I'm going to do that now because now my growth is to speak up or to stand up for myself. Okay. Or make my needs known. So in each situation, it's different, right? That's why we don't want to run to the action line. I don't know if I should speak up or if I should just stay quiet. I have no idea. Let me just see what's happening with me right now. And then I'm going to have so much more insight. Okay. So in this case, if she's feeling he's going to hurt her and then she's feeling anxious. So how is she showing up? She's probably not actually showing up in a way that's going to be more helpful for making sure the baby's okay, right? Maybe she starts criticizing him. Maybe she grabs the baby away. Maybe she doesn't say anything because she's so nervous to say something, right? So what actions are happening because she's feeling anxious? And the result is what? Like she doesn't trust her husband, or she's not really showing up and being present for her baby. So if she were to look at that and be like, what's the result that I want? Maybe what she needs to do is, if he's not actually burping her too hard, but it's just more than she's comfortable with, maybe what she wants to be able to do is to feel trusting and loving and encouraging. So that and then her actions would be something along the lines of like thanking him and then being able to offer that kind of feedback in a way that he can hear it. And he doesn't feel like, forget it, I'm just a failure. Why should I help with the baby? Right? So when we're in this place where we like feel super rigid, like he's doing it wrong, we actually usually don't communicate very well. And then we end up not getting what we need. Right? So it's really helpful when we clear up our thinking. I don't need to tell you what to say. I don't need to tell you how to approach your husband. You're going to know because you're now coming at it from a place where you're very clean and very calm and very aware of what you're trying to accomplish in that moment, instead of just kind of like riding the waves of all the emotions that are coming up for you. Okay. She also has a model. I'm going to go to the next one. She also has a model about judgmental of him for not doing it right. Right. So then we'd have another one that's very similar. The thought is he's not doing it right. So she feels judgmental. So what is that creating for her? Okay. All right. Thank you for the tip to create the thought first and do the act of self-care. Also for observing, and it might not be an action of self-care, right? That's the fun part. For observing the cranky old lady, I'm sure harder to do in real life, but surely worthwhile hard work. It's not hard. It's actually so much easier than believing her. It really is. The energy is, I'm in the ocean and I'm drowning in the waves and I'm thrashing around trying to survive a really, really intense, like heavy waves, or I'm in the lifeguard chair and I'm watching the waves very carefully to observe them. And I'm aware of them. Maybe not even like so carefully, but like I'm very aware of the waves and I'm watching them. That's the energy difference, right? When we're swept up in the emotions and we're believing her, oh my gosh, I don't deserve it. That generates all this very, very powerful emotion. And when I just sort of step back into watcher mode, I go into my little lifeguard chair and I'm like, oh, there was a little bit of, there was a little wave of despair. There was a little wave of insecurity. Okay, I created that with that thought. Interesting, right? So sort of like watching that old lady, it can really kind of just be entertaining, honestly. It doesn't need to be hard work. It's practice, but you're thinking anyway. So you might as well think in a way that helps you. That's what I think. Okay. I have some more questions here. If people want to hear more coaching examples, I'm going to stop for a moment and just give you information about my course. For those of you who would like to learn more about how to work with me, who I am, how you even got to this webinar in the first place, any of those questions, I'm going to continue quickly and go through just to give you an idea about coaching. And then I'll come back and answer any other questions that you have, or I'll pull some here from my anonymous questions. Okay. Oops, that's the wrong direction. Here we go. First thing I want to say is coaching is a great idea. I wrote good. It's a great idea. Does that mean coaching with me is the best idea for you? You're going to know that, not me, right? You're going to know if I feel like the right coach for you. There might be a different coach. I have a specific style. I'm pretty straight. I like to laugh a lot. You know my style now because you've been here already for 40 minutes. So you have to figure out the right coach for you, but I am a big, big fan of coaching. I find that everything that takes a long time takes much less time when my head is clean. All of my relationships are easier, right? And I always know that I have a tool to go to when I'm struggling. I never feel like I just need to figure it out. There's always a tool. The model works on everything. It changes every part of your life. And I really like to start with marriage because I really think if you can do this in your marriage, you can do it anywhere, but also because a marriage is such a central part of our lives. And when things are off in our marriage, it's very hard to find your groove in other places. It's very hard to compartmentalize how your marriage is going, right? So most of the women who work with me have very strong marriages and they want them to be exceptionally strong. Okay. Some women who are working with me have a lot of fears. A lot of women have both. They have some really scary fears that pop up sometimes, but also it's kind of a great relationship. It's like kind of this mishmash. And that's of course, because you have a human brain. So I love starting with marriage, but it touches every area of our life. The work you do in your marriage shows up everywhere. And here are some of the main places where I see it showing up for my clients and of course for myself. Time management. If you listen to the podcast, I talk about time management all the time. It's all coming from the same thing. My thoughts about my time, my thoughts about my schedule. When you're procrastinating and you're just trying to get yourself to do the thing, put it in a model. Learn how to use coaching for yourself so that you just want to do the thing instead of using willpower and self-control to try and get everything, because there's a limited supply of that. And also it's not so fun. Right. And the things that there's the reasons that you're avoiding all these things are really coming from your thinking about it. And that's completely in your control. Your career, right? Your marriage is a huge relationship, but you probably have a lot of relationships in your career. Most of all, your relationship with yourself, your confidence in yourself. Okay. So all of that comes out and can be applied when you work on your marriage. parenting, whether you have children now or not, learning unconditional love with your husband, who's not yours, is harder than your children. But you know what? As your kids get older and they're not just delicious and wearing whatever you tell them to wear, and you get to put them in the cute little stroller, you're also going to be challenged with unconditional love. You're also going to be challenged to not see them as the enemy and to just love them and to be able to show up the way you want to show up and to be able to put down that boundary or give that consequence. And so again, you do the work in your marriage and it transfers over into parenting. Health and home management overwhelm. These are ones that we coach on often directly inside my coaching programs, because as I said, as a newlywed coach, I touch everything that's going on in your marriage. And some of you might be married longer. I also do marriage groups that are for people married 5 years and up. So I'll talk about that soon. Okay. Home management overwhelm. Often the friction that's coming out in the relationship comes out over the smallest things. It doesn't mean the thing is small. It doesn't mean there's nothing, it's silly for you to be upset when it's just the dishes. When it's the dishes, we find out what's going on in your head and then we get to coach on it. So I don't care if it's the dishes or if, he just totaled your car. It doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't matter the weight or whatever the actual specific problem is, because what we're looking for is your thinking. Okay. The program that I run, let me just make sure I covered all of that. Yes, I did. The program that I run is called the Marriage Mastermind. And as I said, I run one group that is for women in their first 5 years of marriage. And I run another group for women who are 5 years and up. It's slightly different coaching. And I find it's very powerful to separate the two. I started coaching people one-on-one. I started actually in 2015. I certified with the Refuah Institute, which is a specialized Jewish life coaching program. So we really focused on issues of Torah-focused coaching and also issues that come up inside the Jewish community. That was like sort of their specialty inside the Refuah Institute. In 2016, those of you who know the Life Coach School in Brooke Castillo, I went for an advanced training with her in 2016 and started using the model in all of my coaching. The model is designed by Brooke Castillo, although it's really, you can find it everywhere, including in Torah, because it's just reality. It's just what happens. Something happens, you have a thought that creates a feeling, and then you have action and results. I mean, it's not new, but the cleanness and the ability to use it on yourself so easily was designed by Brooke Castillo. So I trained with her first in 2016. And then on April 5th, I certified as a life coach school coach. So I'm now officially one of their certified coaches, which is so exciting. But most importantly, just like you, I am also a wife. I'm also a mom of 4. I cook Shabbos. I do all the things, right? And and because of that, I couldn't keep coaching one-on-one and be able to reach all the women who were asking for coaching. So I formed the Marriage Mastermind with the hope that I would be able to really give over the same level of quality coaching inside of a group. And what I found was that it was so amazing. It was so beyond my wildest dreams, because inside the Marriage Mastermind, you get something that you don't get in one-on-one coaching. What you get inside of a group program, and I keep my groups to 6 women. So it's super, super private and personal, because I think that's really, really important. But what you get is that you get to watch other people be coached. And when you watch someone else be coached, that actually allows you to see something that could be in your blind spot, right? Maybe this woman's reaching for something that's higher than you even would have tried to reach for. You see something of yourself in the other women being coached. And because it's not you getting coached, your defenses are down and you're able to absorb the material and understand the material so much more quickly. So I really am so excited to be offering the Marriage Mastermind, because I think there's something really special about doing this work with other women. Also, I wanted it to be more accessible. So the Marriage Mastermind is significantly less expensive than coaching with me one-on-one. So for people who are not able to afford one-on-one coaching, this is a great option. Okay, what else did I want to share with you? I want to just explain the format really quick. So the main things that we focus on inside the mastermind are mastering the model, right? I want you to be able to have your own self-coaching practice. So at the end of the 3 months of the mastermind, you can work on any issue in your life with the model. The other thing is understanding him better. And as I said, this is not coming from a place of manipulation or trying to change him. This is coming from a place of, I love him. I want to partner with him. I want to be the best wife that I can be. and I want to understand him. And there's so much misinformation and so much misunderstanding that I can show you the model and I can help you stop being frustrated with him, but I could also just give you a small piece of information about how he's wired differently than you. That's going to clean it all up right away. So we focus on understanding him better, understanding the stage of life that he's in, understanding his motivators, understanding the differences in communication can clean up a lot right away. And then you get to really appreciate him in a new way. And then loving you more. This is the confidence piece, right? This is learning to speak to yourself in a way that is loving. Because you know what? When you're able to really love yourself, you show up so much better for everyone else in your life. And also, it's really, truly the most important relationship you have, other than your relationship with God, is your relationship with yourself. How you speak to yourself is going to come out in everything that you do. And you're stuck with you. At the end of the day, you're always with you. So you might as well make that a great relationship. So the way the Marriage Mastermind works, it is 12 weeks of group coaching. And again, that's limited to 6 women. We have a weekly Zoom class where I teach the next piece of the material, going through those 3 things: mastering the model, understanding him better, and loving you more. And we start with a little bit of material. It's about 15 to 20 minutes. And then there are 2 women will get coached each call. So that means every 3 calls, you're getting coached on anything that you want to bring. Because the model is global, you don't need to bring your most private, vulnerable thing to learn how to coach yourself, right? The goal is really for you to get mastery of the model. So you can bring something that you're comfortable getting coached on in front of the other women. And then what I really love is we have this Slack channel. Slack is kind of like a web-based WhatsApp. Not everyone who joins the mastermind has or wants a smartphone. So, and also I don't necessarily want you, getting distracted all day long by what's going on. So Slack, you can have an app or you can have it on your computer, and we have different channels. So we have a channel for wins, where if somebody uses the material and they want to brag, that's so important to be able to do. And because the other women in the group are cheering you on and getting inspired by you, it's a gift when you come to the wins channel and you brag about something that you did really well. And it's really good practice for some of us. Some of us need to learn how to brag a little bit in a loving group. Okay. Also, you can ask questions, you can get call recordings, you can get the worksheets that I send out after each call so that you can go through and do your own coaching in those. And you can get private written coaching from me. So if there's something you're wanting to work on in your coaching and you're not comfortable bringing it to the group, whether you're concerned about a Shmira Salashon issue or it's just simply a privacy issue, that's fine. You can send it to me and nobody else will see it. And I will respond to you with written coaching. Okay. Again, there's separate groups. If you are in your first 5 years of marriage, I have a group starting next Wednesday at this time. Exactly. So if you can make it to this webinar, you're good to go. And if you can't, you can figure out a way. I believe in you. I found people do really interesting things to make it to some of these group programs. We definitely have someone in a car in most masterminds, right? So 5 and under starts Wednesday. If you are over 5 years married and you want to join the next mastermind, and I'll give you my email on the last slide, and I will put you on that list. And if we fill it before I even open it up to the public, then no one will just ever know about it. It'll just happen and it'll be filled with the people on the wait list. Okay. Oh, was there any last thing? Okay. Yes. Nope. We got it. Okay. So this is my final slide. I'm going to leave this one up here for you. Again, you can register if you want to register for the first 5, firstyearmarried.com/coaching. If you're 5 and up, email me, Kayla at firstyearmarried.com. Here are just some of the amazing testimonials. You get a feel for the energy inside the mastermind from what these women say. So, I mean, look at like Anonymous over here. I mean, she's not anonymous to me, but she's anonymous to you. She requested that. That's fine. I can't believe I've gone my whole life not knowing all this. I see what a difference it feels like to be in my brain now compared to when we first started. And it's amazing. She went on to say, you cannot unlearn this. SD, who was in one of my recent masterminds, being part of a coaching group added so much to the process. This is good for any of you who are worried, like, I don't know, I think I only could do one-on-one coaching. What about a group? She says it added so much to the process. Everyone was so supportive and respectful of each other. And hearing other people get coached on their own situations really helped me apply the information better. And Alex said, Kayla's passion for coaching, marriage, and love are contagious. She has an incredible perspective to offer on making marriage work, and the toolkit she gives in this course is invaluable. So we're starting next week. I would love, love, love to have you on. I'm going to check if we have any last questions. I'll stay on for about 10 more minutes. So if you want to send in another question, I'm here to answer any of your questions, either about the mastermind or coaching questions. Okay. Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for being here. Such a nice crowd. It's like, it'll be 3 people for sure. It was not 3 people, ladies. We got some people here. It's great. Okay. I'm going to head back and answer a couple of the other questions, and I will be here in case anyone wants to ask anything else. Here we go. Oh, here's a really common one. I find the on and off schedule of Nita very challenging. I get anxious before we reconnect physically or with the anticipation of it. Once we're together, it's great, but any tips to help with this anxiety? Okay, let me just do really quick. I'm going to move this over so I can keep you on the last slide in case anyone needs those details. Okay. So this is great. So if you were to think about the model, right? Nita, I put as a circumstance. Okay. And we know this is true because if you talk to different women, which you might not as much as I do because you're not a marriage coach, but I know that some women get so relieved when they're Nita, and some other women feel so hurt or sad or disconnected when they're Nita, and some women just feel cranky, right? Let alone the hormones, right? So Nita is a circumstance. It's just a fact. So if you remember, it goes CTFAR. You guys should just write that down, by the way, if you don't have the model anywhere yet. So she says she gets anxious before we reconnect physically or with the anticipation of it. Okay, so she's worried about this anxiety. So what I would have her say, so actually it's not the Nita itself, it's the reconnecting. So I would say mikvah night would be her circumstance, right? That's on her calendar. She's got her appointment. Mikvah night's coming, or she knows what day it is, right? And her feeling is anxious. So what we want to do is we want to step up a bit and just get that awareness. What is the thought that's generating that anxiety? Right? So what is it? It could be very different for different women. Is it about the halachos? Is it about herself? Is she self-conscious? Is she just nervous about how things are going to go? Right? So her experience of anxiety is going to come from the thinking. So the first piece she wants to do is to get really, really clear. What is that thought actually? Okay. I'm not going to go through the rest of her model since she doesn't have it here. Yes. The 2.0 version, you can join if you want to do the 2.0, I'll email you. Right now, the 2.0 is just to retake the mastermind, is the truth. I have somebody who was just in the last mastermind. Whether something's going to come up, it's not going to be as early as January. So you should totally come again. All right. Nice to see you too. Okay. Oh, love this one because of COVID. Any recommendations on how to improve co-working from home? Okay. So I love this. I've coached a lot. I coached, especially during like the major lockdowns in the beginning, coached a ton on this. This will be my last question unless I see anyone else come in. Which is really, I would start with your feeling. Okay. Or start with the last time there was a problem. Okay. So if you get to like, there was this problem because maybe there was like a lot of noise when you're trying to work on a certain project, and like he was noisy or he was on a meeting and you couldn't focus. So you want to just, again, break it down into that model, right? What was the fact of the situation? What's the exact project I was working on? Maybe what time was it? What was he doing? And you might be able to identify the feeling first. Maybe you were feeling frustrated. Maybe you don't know exactly what the thought was right away. That's okay. You can jump down to the feeling and say, I was feeling really, really angry or really frustrated. So what thought generated that frustration? Okay. So you want to like pop back up and check into that. Okay. And then from there, and then that's really is the tip, because it really sounds like what I should say to you is like, you should each get like soundproof rooms and you should have lots of space. And we often jump to the action line of what can I do technically to improve the situation? And I am all for improving situations technically if you can, but you'll do a much better job if you clean up your thinking first. Okay. So you can say, this is a technical setup issue. I am working on a project and he's talking, but if I'm feeling frustrated, if there's a negative charge to the experience, that's when I know I want to get some coaching. Okay. So anytime you feel a negative charge or you feel urgency, those are clues for you to run a model. Okay. Okay. No, it's not too late for sure. Anyone else who wants to send in questions? You mentioned being self-conscious physically. What would be some thoughts to help with not being self-conscious without feeling like you're lying to yourself? AKA, I just had a baby. Love you. Okay. So yeah, do you remember when I talked in the beginning about going to the Container Store and buying pretty bins and stuffing all your garbage inside, all your clutter inside? That's like you have all these thoughts about your body right now that aren't so positive, that aren't making you feel confident. And you're trying to say, no, it's okay. I'm beautiful. He loves me. Da, da, da. Like I'm trying to just put it in a pretty container. So what I want you to do is I want you to pull it all out. I want you to take your body image, your body, or the number on the scale is what some people will use, or they'll use their dress size, or you could just say my body. Okay. And then I want you to just do a pull it out of the closet. What are all my thoughts going on about my body right now? And try and see if you can do that from that lifeguard space, right? Just watching all the thoughts that have been going through your head. Sometimes I'll do this and I'm like, oh, wow, it's been crazy in there. This is terrible. Why am I thinking like that? Right? Try not to say it's terrible. That's a judgment. But I'm just like, oh my goodness, right? So just get all those thoughts out. Okay. Then grab one. It's not going to seem like it makes sense. I know it might not make sense to say like, okay, why should I put I'm so fat in a model? But what I'm telling you is it's very revealing. It will always be revealing. If your model isn't revealing and doesn't show you something and give you a light bulb moment, you didn't finish the model. That's really what happened. Okay. So I really just would encourage you, like, get that thought download, get that model, then your brain, and especially to finish the model, not just understand the feeling you're generating, but then what do you do when you feel that way? And what is the net result of all those actions? When you get to there, your brain will be willing to release the thought. When you have awareness of your thinking, your brain doesn't need to hang on to it anymore. And then you have space to put in the thought that you want. Okay. I would also just say, again, the confidence, what if you were beautiful podcast episode is relevant to this, which is I always encourage whenever there's an issue with self-confidence or nerves or anything like that, is to turn the thinking outward. Okay. So my brain might start to say, yeah, but you're fat. You just had a baby. You don't look good anymore. Whatever my brain wants to say to me. And I might just go like, I get to connect with my husband right now. Let me think about how much I love his body, or how much I love to connect to him, or how much I love him, right? I'm just turning my attention to him, or I just want to be here and be authentic with him, right? So I'm just turning my attention outward, because if we just try and do like that 180, like you don't look good, yes, you look good, our brains, you're too smart for it. Your brain's not going to just, change its mind quite so quickly. So that would be my advice for you. Okay, my friends, I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to sign off here. If you have any final questions about the mastermind, if you want to go ahead and register, again, you can sign up at firstyearmarried.com/coaching. There should be a link right there to pay, and then I will send you registration. Would love, love, love to have you in our group. Again, we're starting next week. And if you have any other questions, or you're 5 years and up and you want to get on one of the other groups, let me know. So that's Kayla at firstyearmarried.com. And I hope you got a lot out of this call today. Okay. Be well. Bye-bye. Oh, and then this is the part where I have to figure out how to actually end the webinar. Don't mind me. Okay, bye.